Well, she's obviously really sore-footed. She's sore joints, swollen joints. She's had some bouts of laminitis, and she's a mess. She's got osteoarthritis, big time. And that's because she's a lot horse. She's been, they don't have turnout. They have stalls and corrals, and um, I think they have a little bit of turnout, but and you can see when she's walking there, she's in terrible pain. She's got her tail all perked up, and she comes. They make her walk every day from a corral and over to the barn and to eat and stuff for a while, and just so she gets some exercise. But it's painful.
You can see painful.
So then they gave her a half of just a half a pill a day for about 3 days of a nerve tooth. What they said there, a nerve tooth, a patented natural remedy. It's a nerve tooth energizer, which means it removes oxidative stress. And they let her out of the corral after those 3 days, and all of a sudden she perked up, started trotting, took off running. And this is she's never done this in 2 years. So you'd think, wow, this is a miracle. But when a horse has that much inflammation, or anything has that much inflammation in them, you just don't remove it overnight. But what it did was that pill removed enough oxidative stress and got enough energy going in and out of those mitochondria that she felt good. She just all of a sudden, wow, I feel good. And she took off running. Well, let me tell you, she didn't walk back from that barn the way she ran to it.
And Netflix for just £25 a month.
Oh, sorry.
Made for mind-expanding, star-sporting drama fans like you.
Sorry, something else started playing. There we go. Sorry about that.
So anyway, she, they started, because they saw that happen, they thought, well, there's hope for this horse. So, that we could at least have a horse that isn't crippled, that's going to have to be put down. They were at the point of just about putting her down. So they they put her on this synergizer or this natural supplement for about one. They started giving her one a day or two a day. I don't know how many they were giving her a day, one or two a day. And over about a year's time, she came back to about normal. Her joints, the swelling went out of her joints, and you couldn't ride her heavy or anything, but you could maybe ride her around the lot or put a kid on her or something, and she was kind of usable. She was only 22 or so, 21, 22, 23 years old. I don't know when she got well. And she stayed well for 3 or 4 or 5 years. She finally died, but at least it improved the quality of her life a whole bunch. But she got that way because of laminitis, just that, feeding too much of whatever, and maybe, in the spring, a lot of green grass or whatever. But anyway, that's a result of several bouts of probably a dozen bouts, maybe, of, slight laminitis, and it gets worse as it goes on. That inflammation it's called inflammaging when they get to that age, and it just never quits. It just keeps going on. But and once they've had a big bad problem like she did, and but she did get better, and that little incident, watching that particular segment started me. I was messing around with this supplement with people, and I thought, wow, I'm kind of I've been around horses all my life. I'm like, let's play with this with horses. So I developed a thing called Performance Horse Stress Management Clinics, and started traveling and started doing these clinics in front of all kinds of groups, everywhere from quarter horse associations to barrel groups to ropers to whoever would get in front of, and I did it, and I did some of the big symposiums where they'd have 300 or 400 people or 1,000 people. I did one with 5,000 people, and did my little presentation and talked about stress in horses and just the basics. So I'm a, you could get into all of the things that people do and all the supplements they're using and the this and the that, but when it comes down to it, it's about the basic horse, and so many people make that mistake. They go beyond the basic horse, and the basic horse is the roughage and the forage that horse gets as the bulk of their food. And if that is really good and has a good profile, the horse, if it's really good, you don't need anything else. But if there's a lot of things, of course, in the environmentally that mess up the horse, especially competition horses, being hauled for hours in trailers and drinking different water at different places, and not eating on a very, not foraging, just eating when they can eat and so forth. And it's amazing to watch some of these, like barrel racers. They have these famous horses that they've won the world with, or they've hauled thousands of miles, and I call those horses bulletproof. I mean, they're just tough. They can take it. And but they all have, you'll find, that they all have ulcer problems. They lose horses from that, and that's the whole crux of humans and horses, is that gut-brain axis, that immune system and that healthy gut. And that horse, the more I'm sure if you could have seen inside of her, as soon as she started to get a little bit healthy and started, and the in and out was good, the mitochondrial, function became better, and the energy in and the energy out and the glucose control and all of that, she got better, and those junctions in her gut that were probably quit leaking, and she got better. So
What about recovery time for performance horses? How does this impact the recovery time?
well, it depends. Like, as an example, I spent a lot of time down at Ruidoso. I said that last week, and at the racetrack. I was overall down there. I probably spent a month there, and I was real good friends with the guy who leads the horses out, and kind of watches over everything, make sure everybody stays in line and all that. When they're exercise, he's there all day, just about every day, and when they're doing their training and everything, and then he leads horses out to each race. And so I got pretty close to a bunch of those guys. And the big thing about, let's just use an example, a horse at the racetrack, a lot of times they do what they call tie up. And that means that they've got rump muscles, or muscles that absolutely seize, and they can't move hardly, and it hurts them to move. And it happens. It's a funny thing. Sometimes they don't get out of the chute. They'll tie up. Sometimes they'll get 20 feet out of the chute and just and stop. Sometimes they get halfway through the race. Sometimes they get all the way to the end and then just freeze up. And so there's a metabolic reason for that. And the funny thing is, sometimes those horses are so tied up, they got to take a horse trailer out, and 6 or 8 or 10 guys lift that horse up and absolutely carry him into the trailer and haul him back to the barn. But they get them back to the barn, and if I started looking at their feed real close, everything they were feeding them, including the hay and whatever supplements they had them on and stuff, you could see that probably they were consuming a lot of glyphosate. And because we knew that these racehorses are full of glyphosate, because Anthony Samsel, a friend of Stephanie Senes at Boston MIT, he did a whole bunch of testing with Don Bennett, a veterinarian at Belmont, and they tested horse hooves, tissue, ligaments, all kinds of things, and they found those horses were really full of glyphosate. And so we know these horses are consuming a lot of that, and they feed them a lot of alfalfa, and most of that alfalfa is Roundup ready. So we'd pull them off, we'd make sure I knew a guy there that had some hay that he went to a lot of trouble to get, and that was glyphosate free. So we'd feed them that glyphosate and put them on this supplement and to remove the oxidative stress. And you know, these guys that own these horses, they would tell me that sometimes it would take 14 to, you know, 7 days would be fast, but it'd take 14, 20 days, sometimes 30 days before they were back to normal, kind of normal, where they could exercise them and think they could use them again. We do this to them in usually 72 hours or maybe a little bit more. Man, we'd have them almost back to normal. I mean, they couldn't believe it.
So why do you think that is? Why is it so quick in a horse like that?
Well, because it opened up their mitochondrial function, and the horse processes, you know, they have a huge system, and they process food, or, you know, anything they ingest, and air, everything, water, really quickly. It goes through their body quite fast, and you know, they're not garbage eaters like humans. They eat pretty good. You know, they're vegetarians. They're eating all vegetable matter, and so they process things. When you put something in a horse, it's in his blood in minutes. And you know, 20 minutes, it's, you know, sometimes seconds, but 20 minutes, it's in their system. And if it's right, it'll you know, like in this case, it opens up that mitochondrial function, and that sugar, that glucose, you know, metabolism, and it starts to, you know, they come out of it. We put them on one of these tablets a day, but when they had these problems, we'd put them on 2 every 4 hours, or up to 4 every 4 hours, depending on the horse and what we thought. And do that at least 4 times a day during the day, and then start over in the morning. And in a couple of days, it was amazing. I mean, they were back just ready to roll. So, you know, and that's basics. And the basics are food, water, and air. And, you know, what people don't understand, what they're feeding them, that roughage, everything that goes into your body comes from the earth, and it comes from the soil. And so if you're feeding them a hay that has a real poor profile, like you could be buying hay across the road from a guy, and you're saying, oh, I've been buying them from that guy for 20 years, and he gives me a good price, and, you know, my horses have done pretty good on it. But then you see, you know, you'll go to a place where these horses are kind of, I don't know how to call it. They just don't have the zen in them. They just kind of are a little bit loggy, and, you know, you look at them and they're just not, the energy, you know, that inner energy is just not there. And so right away, my first thought, it's either food, water, or air. You know, the air is full of particulates, or the food isn't that good, or the hay they're eating, or whatever supplements and hay they're eating, or the water is full of real bad. And I have found bad water that really affected some horses in a couple of places. But anyway, you give them that, you know, they get those basics right, and they're really right. You've got pretty much a healthy horse. But I mean, now everybody's into the supplements, almost a peer thing, you know. Oh, well, I've got my horse on this, on that, you know, and then in the meantime, they've got an unhealthy horse, and they're trying to figure out why. Well, sometimes it's not as complicated. I'm a basics guy. First, we look at the basics, and then if it's not that, then you kind of one by one. If you have the money to do panels on them, and you can figure out exactly what they're short of and what they're not producing and what's being blocked or whatever. That's great if you've got a problem. But
how quickly would a horse recover if you identified glyphosate in their diet, or, you know, the track maybe is sprayed with glyphosate? Once you remove that from their environment, how quickly would they likely recover?
It depends. If that horse has been eating something that's full of glyphosate for a long time, he's changed his microbiome, because glyphosate works as I mean, the first thing it is it's an antibiotic.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you know, it was patented as an antibiotic, and it doesn't kill bad bacteria. It feeds bad bacteria and it kills the good bacteria. And it opens up it loosens up those intestinal wall junctions, and it messes up the amino chain and the sulfur transport, and it just does a lot of things. And it binds to metals. I mean, it's got an atom in that's negative, and it'll bind to magnesium, it'll bind to zinc, and it carries them. Any metal, copper, it carries those metals where they're not supposed to go, and it'll even carry them through the blood-brain barrier because it's such a small molecule. So, and that might be, of course, now horses. Cushing's disease is kind of a big deal. The University of Kentucky said that in one of their papers that I read, said that they thought that 35 to 50% of all horses over the age of 15 will get some degree of Cushing's, will acquire some degree of Cushing's disease. So,
relatively recently.
That's the pineal gland. So you're messing with that, and so when you're carrying heavy metals into the pineal gland and you're doing all kinds of different things, it changes their bio makeup. And so, you know, it's never complicated if you slow down and go back to basics and figure out the problem. Many times I have walked. There's a lot of things when you're going down the road. You see a lot of things. And, you know, I went into a corral one time, and it was along a highway, a busy highway, probably 30,000, 50,000 cars a day, trucks and cars. And this guy was having, you know, he said, just having continuous problems, little problems with his horses. And I said, well, you know, these horses got big old lungs, and they're breathing all these particulates from all these automobiles going by. And right away, I saw the automobile thing, and I said, you know, that could be a very big factor. Because there's cyanide, there's arsenic, there's all kinds of things in that air that you know that they're sensitive to. And I've read studies, human studies from Los Angeles, where they did 15,000 people, and they checked. They watched their health for like over 10 years. You know, that lived 100 feet from the freeway, 200 feet, 500 feet. So if it's affecting humans, and the difference in the health was unbelievable. And so if it's affecting humans, believe me, it's affecting horses. It'll affect a horse quicker than a human. So just little things. You know, another place where there was these big electric lines going right over the top of this guy's corral, and I go, man, you know, you got a lot of energy, a lot of electro energy going on here that's not good for anything, but it's really not good for these horses. And he was having this, you know, these guys bring it because they're having these problems with these horses, kind of continuous problems. And sometimes it's the air. In West Texas, we were in Stevensville, Texas. We were out west of Stevensville somewhere. We were out there with a bunch of barrel racers, and these girls were telling me their horses' lungs were bleeding. And, you know, I told them it's the oil gas, because, man, could you smell that oil gas? They don't even notice it because they live there, and they live there a long time. They don't pay attention. But those horses, it'll affect them. And then a lot of times in the city, if they're getting a lot of fluoride in the water, if they're watering their horses with the city water and it's full of fluoride, it's going to affect that horse. I'm telling you. So it's always
more and more things all the time.
It can be an accumulative thing, you know, of a lot of things, or it can. And the thing about glyphosate, it accumulates, and it just after a time, you know, and it's hard to break up. I mean, I know how to break it up in a human. I don't know what you put in a horse to really break it up, other than their system is good, and it'll, you know, if you get them off of it, they'll get rid of a lot of it. So,
well, shall we open up for questions now? That's, you know, fascinating. I've got a few questions, and so I'm sure the others will. If you can unmute yourselves, please.
We don't have the same horse that we had 50 years ago, or 40 years ago, or even 30 years ago, or probably even 20 years ago.
Yeah.
We're, the horses that live in the country, that are pastured horses that live in Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, wherever. If they're if they're in that good clean air and they're being exercised, they got a good thing. Yeah, you probably got pretty good, strong, powerful horses, but in a lot of environments, you've got a way weakened horse. So.
Well, we have a lot of things affecting all of us now, and we need to do our part to look after our environment, certainly.
10% of all the horses in the United States will colic every year. 10%.
Okay.
I'd like to know how that
So
compares.
Ron's gonna stay working?
It
Oh,
might
just
even be
tomorrow?
more.
Is he gonna work this afternoon?
Oh,
Okay.
So
Poor
any
guy.
questions
Okay.
for Michael?
I'll see you Sunday.
If you'd unmute yourself. I have the ability to mute you, but I don't have the ability to unmute you. So if you'd unmute yourself and then let us know what questions you have.
Patricia,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was driving and then I lost you for quite a while.
Oh, sorry.
So it's obviously my fault. So okay, so you've got a horse and it lives in the city or near a city or near a road. I mean, what on earth can you do? Did you mention anything about that? 'Cause
Well, that's the problem. But one of the best things you can do is try to keep that stress out of them. And if you do it with with this particular supplement that we were using, I mean, at least you can keep a lot of the oxygen. We don't know. We've never been able to measure horses of how. We know how much stress, how much oxidative stress it'll take out of a human. It'll take 30% or whatever it is. Is it 30%?
Well, 70% after about 4 months.
After about 4
Average
months, it'll take
70%.
out of a human. And so I don't know what it'll take out of a horse, but it'd be a lot, I'm sure.
Wow.
So, that's the best thing you can do is try to keep their, it's energy in, energy out, and a free travel in that cell. And as long as you're doing that cellular, health, that'll help, of course. But it's like, I always say it's like pouring gasoline on the fire. You can do everything right, but if you're still pouring gasoline on the fire, it's hard to cure. But
yeah.
Did you ask me last week about the rubber stall mats? That wasn't you.
Yes.
No, that was Stella, I think, wasn't it?
It was Stella.
Yeah, I did a little research on rubber mats, and I think I kind of like them. I've never used them, but there's a lot. It makes a lot of sense, those rubber mats, if you have good ones. I mean, there's probably all kinds of levels of them, but a real good rubber mats, I think, especially in a stall where there's a way to control the urine and the smells and everything. That I think it's a better daily way to control horses, and it gives them a comfort. And I think it's probably a pretty good idea, actually.
Would that be prone to mold? Would that attract mold?
No, because you can clean that rubber. You can keep it very clean if they fit. If you put them in there so they fit pretty good, and you can clean that stall out. The thing is, you can put enough stuff on top of the mat to soak up the urine, and pretty much is all you need to do. And then if you're not a person that cleans the stall regularly, then it's the same old thing. But if you pretty much clean those stalls every few days, just sweep them out. It makes it a lot easier to sweep it out because you got that rubber below it. You just sweep it out, kind of wash it down, away you go. So
sounds good.
What other factors or roles does oxidative stress play in a horse besides the laminitis, the arthritis? We saw with Zamora that her belly was hanging quite low initially, and her spine was pulled down. So what caused that? Because we noticed in the latter video that seemed to be somewhat corrected. Did that take some time? That's a couple of questions.
Well, she's a weakness. She was weakened, and that mare had like 8 foals. So, she tended to have a little bit bigger belly than some horses, but yeah, but her, her belly is, that's the fulcrum point for everything. And so there's an accumulation there, and there isn't the movement. But when you start getting them, when they start moving around more and everything, that'll straighten up some, and that some of that belly will go away, and her back will straighten up a little bit, and she'll get better without
Sort of
all
a
that belly.
combination of things then.
You have all, causes of oxidative stress, or there's physiological stress, which is confinement, lights, noise, all that kind of constraints. I have a lady right now that said, "Oh, I've got this horse. I've been through this many times with people. Oh, my horse is cribbing." That cribbing is when they're chewing on the fence, and it's 90% of the time it's boredom, or they need or they're by themselves and they need even if you put a goat with them, sometimes they'll quit doing that. So horses like to have companionship, and then there's physical stress, and which is the competition, whatever you're doing, exercise, travel, whatever physical stress they're going through, and then of course atmospheric stress, which would be the air pollution and the odors, and nutritional stress, which we've kind of talked about, the metabolizing the feed, the water, drugs, pesticides, and herbicides, and whatever. So
What about non-sweaters? Non-sweaters. I hear that more in the States than I do in the UK.
Yeah, well, mostly that happens.
Down for that.
Most of that happens where there's, a lot of, what do they call it? When the air is full of, has a lot of atmospheric moisture, all the time. And they tend to, if they quit sweating, they heat up and they'll die. So they claim, now I've never had one, so I don't know, but I hear them talking about they do this supplement to them and pulls them right out of it. I mean, they start, it's the same thing. Their mitochondrial function isn't working, and so it's a way, it works for that too. Sweaters, I guess they have a pretty big problem with that in some places in the South, especially.
Yeah, it's not so prominent here, but it's
in the north where I'm from, in Wyoming, Montana. I mean, you seldom, I've never seen one, but I'm sure that there are a few, but horses, they produce they produce a lot of saliva that protects them, and if they're not in the right way to do that, where they're not foraging and chewing, they don't produce that saliva. They produce like 25 gallons a day of saliva.
Wow.
And that saliva has high concentrations of calcium and sodium bicarbonate, and that buffers the stomach acid. And if that's all good, then you just don't have as many gastric ulcers. And they have a lot of digestive tract, and food moves through their digestive tract, 1 to 3 feet sometimes in a minute. It's only most of the food's only in their stomach. I mean, a lot of the food's only in their stomach for like 15 minutes, but a horse in competition, air-wise, he breathes 2 to 5 gallon buckets of air every second. And he takes it like 120 breaths a minute. So all that air going through there, if that's not good, clean air, I mean, he has to process whatever particulates are in that air. So that's why there is a lot of, influenza, all kinds of respiratory problems in horses because of the amount of air that moves through there. So, there's a lot of things to keep track of.
What are some signs that people can look for to identify the onset of oxidative stress being perhaps a factor in something tissue?
Well, it's always a factor. I mean, it just is. A horse is really comfortable and just goes in and out of his, comes in and out of his corral and goes out to pasture, and he just, nobody bothers him, and he's got a friend, and he hasn't got much oxidative stress, but that horse that doesn't have all those things, I mean, everything stresses a horse. I mean, they're a flight and fight animal. There is very little that doesn't stress that horse at some point.
Mhm.
So, I mean, a bad stress is like we watched that video. I mean, that horse she was just about dead, and it brought her out of it. And never changed her feed really, just removed the oxidative stress. So,
Well, we've seen quite a few. I have seen quite a few, but I think Zamora just so perfectly illustrated how quickly a horse can recover, much quicker than most humans, I think.
oh, there's no doubt about that. Dogs are even more. I mean, I shouldn't say they're more sensitive, but they're sensitive.
More like humans? Are they more sort of in between
Well,
horses
yes,
and humans? Because they
they
can have a
claim-
pretty rubbish diet too.
The writings say they have seven times more oxidative stress than people.
Mm.
And now we don't know, or at least 7 times more stress than people. So
Well,
I mean, and they get glyphosate. I mean, we aren't talking about glyphosate so much here, but glyphosate affects a dog really bad.
well, they're closer to the ground, so they're breathing in, and their face is down.
Their paws pick it up off of if they're exercised where there's a lot of spraying going on, they pick it up on and they lick it off their paws.
Mhm.
I've had guys go to a lot of trouble to get their food, that doesn't have any glyphosate in it, and then the dog still got a problem. And I'm sitting in this one guy's house. He's got these 2 big old mastiffs, and he's going, we've had him on this supplement for like 5 months, but these tumors are not changing. They don't seem to be getting worse, but they're not changing. So I'm sitting there watching him. About every 20, 30 minutes, he's throwing them, these great big old dogs, a treat, one of these big old bone treats. I said, let me see that bag of bone treats. And I read that bag of treats, and man, it was full of glyphosate. I said, man, you got to switch treats here. This is what's doing it. So, and as soon as he did that, the tumors went away. I'm telling you, they left. It was amazing. So
That's
We've
amazing.
got to attack the root cause of the problem and then stop introducing more causes.
Mm.
Then you've got a fighting chance.
That's why I always say you can't pour gasoline on the fire.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more dogs in this country. There's less than 10 million horses, but there's like 70, almost 80 million dogs.
We've
So
got horses and
they-
dogs.
a lot more science gets directed towards dogs and horses because of that, because the money is, I mean, it's always about money.
Mm.
I mean, there's a lot of things we'd like to study with horses, but to get somebody to put up the money to do it is kind of rough, because there isn't enough horses and the market's not big enough and blah, blah, blah,
Mm.
But I'd like to do a lot of testing on horses and just see some things. But, to do that, you've got to have good lab connections and you got to pay for it.
Yeah.
So, and I've tried to talk some of these universities into doing more stuff with glyphosate, but they're so brainwashed, they don't believe that it's a problem. Most of them don't believe it's a problem. They're starting to now more than ever, because it's really been around. But they're talking about this glyphosate even getting into these vaccines and everything. So now we're starting to get a little more action. But we're in a tough time, and we're in a controlled time, and you got to find independent laboratories and independent people, or you get skewed everything, because the science from mainstream you can't trust it anymore. So.
Well, no, because illness is profitable in horses as well as dogs and humans. So having a natural, safe, effective approach just has to be word of mouth so much. It's not going to come from mainstream. So does anyone have any questions? We're coming to the end of shot over our half hour a little bit. So any questions, please unmute yourself. No,
Sorry, Dawn didn't get on here. I don't know what happened to Dawn, but he
no,
didn't get
Dawn
on.
is having technical issues, so we'll have to help him work that out, and we'll come back with
Yeah,
another session.
let's stay on here. Let's stay on here afterwards and see if we can get him on here.
Okay, we'll help him out. Now, if you want to get in touch, you can get in touch with me or the person that invited you on the call. If you have any issues that you would like us to cover, let us know, or you can enter it in the chat right now. You see the chat button on the bottom bar, sort of in the center, and just let us know if there's a particular issue. And we'll see if Michael and Dawn have any experience with that. And I should think they would.
Well, we can't answer all the questions. I mean, we can answer, you get into the metabolic questions of certain horses, it can get kind of complicated, but because you need to be there, you need to see some things, but usually you can give people some really good direction on, some things they might be doing, that might change, that'll change that horse's health.
Because sometimes just
there-
practical things.
Yeah, it's all 99% of the time. I mean, I've had guys pull me out of it. I've been do a talk and a couple guys grab a hold of me. Man, would you come out to my place and look at my horse and blah, 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 and my horses. And I've had 5 vets out there. I've spent all this money and we're not getting anywhere. And, you go out there and I look at the environment that they're in and, and what they're eating and what they're drinking. And that's my first thing. And 9 times out of 10, it's an environmental problem. It's amazing. Especially if it's all the horses. If you got 4 or 5 horses and they're kind of all that way, there's something wrong here. And it's usually environmental or nutrition related, And I'm not a nutritionist, but I understand a lot about horse nutrition and minerals and where they come from and what are important. So usually, a lot of times, 2 or 3 times, it was just selenium. Selenium's can be real hard to come by in some parts of the country. And so,
well, we're seeing that so much in people now, especially with this situation we're all dealing with, and that if your body's not a host for the virus, then your body can deal with it. And that's true with so many things, not just this virus, but this is sort of bringing our attention to that fact. So if we look after ourselves, we look after our dogs, we look after our horses, mammals, our bodies were made to heal. And it is our body that does the healing when we remove that interference. And largely it's the oxidative stress is linked to that interference. So if you deal with that, and then as Michael's been saying, you remove those exterior influences coming in, stop pouring gasoline on the fire, we can turn people around, turn dogs around, turn horses around. So that's our aim.
This virus thing should be the biggest lesson we've ever had. We should use it as our lesson to health. I mean, it's always about nutrition and it's always about a strong immune system, immune and stress resiliency. And, they claim that less than 12% of the American public are have biological strength. I mean, less than 12%. Everybody's got comorbidities of some sort or another. Over 50% are on the diabetes spectrum. So you have but if you change that nutrition intake and you build up that immune system, that's what they should be. They shouldn't be talking about masks and isolating. They should be handing out ways to make your body, food guides, way to make your strength, give you more strength, more immune strength, and talking about that. But they don't, because it's all about money and they're after something else. They've got an agenda. So, but it's that simple, really.
Yeah, it's almost too simple. Well, if anyone has any questions, speak now, forever hold your peace. We've gone over time. We want to keep this short so it's easy to share. And if you'd like, again, if you'd like Michael and Dawn to mention, work on anything else, unpack something else, speak on something else, please let us know. So we will say goodbye for now. And thank you very much for joining us. And we hope to see you next time. I think we're going to do an issue on dogs, perhaps in a couple of weeks. So we will see you later on. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.